people have asked me what inspired me to want to do a podcast. I do have an entire podcast that kind of talks about that journey. But one little fact that not everybody knows is that I guested on a podcast and somebody really inspired me to really just give this a go and see what would happen. And so now we're in season 2 of my podcast, Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving. And I want to introduce you to the woman that inspired me. So keep listening.
I know your deep, dark secret. You don't like your life. You're a woman in midlife, and for the past 2 decades or more, you've poured yourself in to other people. You've poured yourself into your career, your family, and yet on the inside, you feel broken. And that's no way to be. I'm Dr. Natalie Marr. I'm a clinical psychologist and a life transition expert. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes, waking up in my early 40s, thinking I've got 2 failed marriages and I'm a single mom for the second time in my life. And I just knew that I could do better, that I could feel better. Fortunately for you, I have about 20 years experience clinically. And so I've created a method that will help you learn to love your story. I know that the story that you're telling yourself about your life feels awful. And I know that you think that you can't change that. I assure you, you can. And when we work together, I'm going to help you to craft a different story, a story that you love, a story that makes you want to get up every single day. Let's work together to help you love your story.
Welcome back, everybody. I am really excited to introduce you to my friend Kim Benoy today. So Kim is somebody that I guested on her podcast. Gosh, I think it was almost 2 years ago now. And she inspired me and really got the wheels turning towards what I wanted to do with this podcast. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Kim Benoy. Are you on my mailing list yet? Because if you're not, you really should be. You want to join at learntoloveyourstory.com. If you scroll down, I'm giving away a freebie for you. Honestly, you know what it is? A free course. I sell online courses, but this is a course just for you. And it's about freeing yourself, letting go of what others' expectations and ideas are for you. You know, that nagging self-doubt in your head, it's usually fueled by your consideration of what others think of you over your consideration of what you think of you. And so I teach you in my video all about what is underlying that kind of self-doubt and how to get out of that conundrum. And I give you a workbook that goes with it that helps you to build the skill sets that you're going to need for that. So please make sure you're on my mailing list, because at the least, you're going to get a free gift. And at the most, you're going to hear about all the things that we're doing on Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving and learntoloveyourstory.com. And you don't want to be missing out on any of the new things that'll be coming your way. Well, let's welcome Kim Benoy to the podcast, who is an inspiration to me to be a podcaster, because I was on her podcast, Midlife with Courage, I think almost 2 years ago now. I can't remember the exact date of it, but it was a while back. But let me just introduce you. Kim Benoy is a wife, a mom, a retired nurse, a certified aromatherapist, and podcast host who has a passion for inspiring women in midlife. She has decided to live every moment and wants others to do the same. So welcome, Kim, to my podcast. And, you know, I'm going to jump right in and just have you tell us your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun to be on the other side of the microphone, so to speak.
I know.
Yeah, and I can't believe it's been 2 years since we had you on. So my story, I always love that question because it's like, oh, I do have a story. But, you know, I grew up in the Midwest, the oldest of 4 kids. And of course, I was responsible, you know, pretty responsible for
Yeah.
different things. And I grew up wanting to learn, and I loved to read, and kind of a quiet kid, and did the traditional, got married at a young age, had my babies very young,
Yeah.
and decided through that whole process I wanted to become a nurse. And so I did that and had a 27-year career from everywhere.
Impressive.
I can't even believe I can say that many years. But and I just, went from being a nurse. I did everything as a nurse, is what I was trying to say. Sorry about that.
No.
Started out with the babies. I always wanted to be a labor delivery nurse, and I kind of ended up assisted living kind of type job. So I did the whole,
So from birth to death, like you did the whole gamut. Wow.
I did. I really did. And so kind of along the way, as I was doing my nursing career, my views on healthcare kind of changed a little bit from being, oh, we're here, we need to treat these symptoms, to no, it's more important to support health and try and stay healthy so that people aren't ending up coming into the hospital or whatever.
Yeah.
And so kind of along the time that I learned about that, I was introduced to essential oils. And so a certain company. And so I started working as it's called a wellness advocate for that company. And it was great. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is a business. This is kind of cool. Like, I could have my own business. And so I kind of went for a few years going in between, like back and forth, like I'm going to focus on my nursing. I'm going to, I did go back to school and got my master's in nursing leadership. So I had, leadership type positions.
Yeah.
So I'd focus on those, and then I go, well, no, it's more fun to sell the oils. And so I'm going to do that. And eventually I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be the top seller of these oils at the top highest levels, and because that's not what I wanted to do.
Right.
I wanted to educate people. And so.
And have more tools like that were consistent with what you were saying earlier, giving folks a way to be healthy, not a way to cure disease, which like that's the medical model, is like you have to be broken and then we'll fix you. But I love this. Like this was really in alignment with your philosophy that you just wanted people to be healthier.
Right. And I wanted them to know that they do have options, as much as important as medications are. There's other things that you can try first or along with, or maybe instead of, and people didn't know that. And so I thought essential oils is just one part of a huge, big picture of options that you can try.
Yeah.
So that the essential oils route kind of took me to last year. I decided I wanted to be an aromatherapist. I wanted to learn more so that I could educate more. Because if you're teaching, you're learning as well.
Yeah. So you're much like me. I think that also comes from the medical field though, too, right? Like like as soon as we get interested in something, then you just like want to study it. You want to have like that certification so that you're educating people well.
Right. Yeah, that was really important to me. And so I kind of had that going on. But if in 2021, I was at like a little business networking thing, and the speaker there said, whatever you like to do, whatever you're passionate about, what is your passion about? What gets you out of bed in the morning? And whatever that is, put it into your business, and then you'll enjoy it and your business will thrive. And I really took that to heart. And I thought, well, what do I like to do and what I love to do? And I realized after probably a week I took to kind of think about it, like I love to get up in front of people and talk.
Yeah.
I really do. And I thought about the different things I'd done. And at that time, we were in the midst of a pandemic, and nobody could get up in front of anybody and talk.
There were no public spaces where we were shouting and talking to one another. No.
And my daughter had a podcast at the time, and I thought, well, I could do a podcast. And it just was, I was excited about it, and I had that thing running up, and within 3 months, I had a couple episodes already to go. So I called it Midlife with Courage. That's still the name. And I just wanted to inspire other women to know that just because you reach a certain age doesn't mean you're done. There's so much more that we can do. And it's just such a great feeling. And I want other women to know that. So,
I love that. I mean, my second question is always to ask what inspired you to start helping women in midlife.
Yeah.
Your story is exactly that, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep hearing in your story too that you, like myself, are looking for generative experiences for women in midlife. Like this
Mm-hmm.
isn't like a sunsetting. Like,
Right.
oh, well, the meat of your life is over. So let's just, go off into the sunset. It's more like, wow, I have a lot to offer.
Exactly.
And the sky's the limit. Like, what do I want to do? And I love that you were looking at voices or listening to voices like
Mm-hmm.
that, one coach or speaker that said, like, go, what gets you up in the morning? What's the passion here? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
totally like, that's what's important, I think, at this stage in our life
Yeah.
is really to be generative and to be leaving a legacy in a way behind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me too, like, if I think when I thought about it, I grew up, as I said, the oldest of four kids. So I was responsible. As a nurse, you have to, quote, take orders from the doctors. That hopefully
Mm-hmm.
that's changed by now. But so I feel like my whole life I was being told what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then I got to this point where I'm like, I don't have to do what everyone's expecting me to do. I can, start this business, or
Yeah.
I can do this podcast, and nobody's going, no, I mean, the little voices, of course, in your head. Well, are you sure? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
You kind of
Yeah.
fight those too, but yeah. So it's an amazing feeling of like liberation, I think is a great word that I can use.
Yes, liberation. I was going to say, like, that sounds freedom, like freedom.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
wanted to kind of turn a corner so that you were
Mm-hmm.
choosing things in your life and not just kind of doing what was told to you. Like,
Yeah.
this is the quintessential life. Take these orders and
Yeah.
you'll do well. I
Yeah.
mean, again, it's not like the first part of your life wasn't great. It was.
Oh,
And
no, no, not at all.
now you want to choose things and have that liberation. So I love
Yeah.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and when I decided not to be a nurse anymore, like I retired, it was like, I thought I'd be more sad about it,
Right.
but I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. It was
I
like,
know
nope.
it's kind of crazy. Like you're
Wait
like,
a minute.
oh, wait a minute. Like I was thinking this was going to be really, it isn't like it's not a loss, but we're so
Yeah.
excited about the other things that we're stepping into.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just look at it like, well, I did that. Okay, check. That one's done. And like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
good. So yeah. So it's a wonderful, crazy time.
I love hearing that. Wonderful, crazy time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you have talked to a lot of women on your podcast. You've talked to,
Yes.
you've been a voice of reason in this place, this pond that we're in, midlife. I'm just curious, what are some of the common challenges that you see, happening for women in midlife and that you're seeking to help them with?
I think the number one thing, and I did this, someday I'm going to write like a little book or something about this, but the number one thing that women say, the theme that comes out is they need to take care of themselves in order to
Mm-hmm.
be there for others. Fill your own cup, self-care,
Yep.
whatever little label you want to put that under, is they have to take care of themselves first. And
Yes.
that is definitely something I personally have learned, but that's number one. Like you can't be there for other people until you are set yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Which makes such logical sense. But I think that
Mm-hmm.
the social programming that we go through really
Mm-hmm.
teaches us a different tack with that as women, that we should be
Yes.
caretakers and that we should draw our energy and our worthiness from how well we do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is
Mm-hmm.
a shelf life. Like it just does. You're gonna burn out in doing that if you're not
Yes.
replenishing the person.
Yes.
And so I do think that, it is one of the more common challenges when you hit midlife, because we're kind of hitting that critical mass point where if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't incorporate some kind of self-care into your life, you're feeling it. Like you don't have any
Exactly.
margins left at this point.
Yes.
You're going to start feeling it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And, I mean, not to be all about me, but like I am the person who wants to do it all by myself. Like I can do this. I can prove to you that I can do this. When I worked a 12-hour shift as a nurse, I'd be like, oh, I didn't go to the bathroom one time. Or like, what? Like you can't sustain that. That is
No.
not okay.
That's not
Yeah.
okay.
No. So now that mindset has totally switched around where, journaling and just taking time to go outside. And the other day I had to get out of the house and I didn't want to bring the dogs. I didn't want my husband to come with me. I just wanted to go.
Just want to
So
be by myself.
I just want to be by myself. So I just went we have a state park near us. I went out for a nice walk and just sat there and it was awesome. So I needed that for me so that I could
Yes.
move on
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
what else needed to be done. So yeah.
I'm curious, and I'm sure my listeners are too, because I think we're all so very different about how we arrive at having better awareness of what our
Mm-hmm.
needs are. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, is there any nuggets of wisdom you could share with my listeners about how you started to learn to listen to your body, mind, and know what you need, and then, follow through like you did the other day, going out just by yourself, no dogs, no husband, just you?
Oh, it was awesome. Um, I think, as you get older, things change in your body physically, of course, and you don't bounce back from things as fast as you
Hmm.
used to. But I mean, aside kind of from that, I am noticing more like when I am stressed out, my breathing gets shallower and I feel myself holding my breath. So I really am paying more attention to what my physical body is doing and feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and that has made a huge difference because just knowing, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like shoulder pain or tightness.
Right.
And then like, oh my gosh, I'm not breathing. What's going on? And so just,
Hmm.
okay, take a break, take a minute, just breathe. Um, so just noticing those things in yourself, like turn your attention to yourself
Yeah.
in whatever it happens to be. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I think,
anchor it to those physical, perceptions, like you're noticing things
yeah.
in your body that feel amiss. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're gingerly trying to meet the needs of those,
Yeah.
symptoms essentially. But what
Yeah.
I really like about that is it's such a far cry from I'm going to go a whole nursing shift and not go to the bathroom. I mean, think about that, right? So like you had conditioned your body to or your mind to ignore your body
Uh-huh.
in your earlier career. And so really the answer to that is the reverse. It's to
Mm-hmm.
really be tender and listen carefully to your body and follow through and nurture your body.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful form of self-care. I like to
Mm-hmm.
tell people that, clients in my psychology practice and in my coaching practice alike, the body is the only part of us that cannot escape what our experience is, right? So we
Right.
get kind of
Right.
good at we can kind of daydream, we can kind of get through our workday, kind of escape in our minds, and just kind of ignore something. We can go to the family holidays and just kind of shut out the weirdos in our family that we don't want to listen to. We get good at that, but we cannot have our body not be experiencing whatever we're going through. And so that is
Right.
such a really great anchor to come
Mm-hmm.
back to, is just nurturing your own body. Because again, it couldn't escape the first time through, but it also is always ever present and something that you can anchor and ground to.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think that I never thought of it that way either. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
those are not things that I don't think, unless you're a mental health professional, you're just thinking
Right.
from day to
Right.
day. So these
Right.
are the nuggets of wisdom I love to share, because I'm like,
Yeah.
everybody should know that. Everybody should think about that, and then,
Right.
be able to use that in the way that they want to use it in their life. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm also curious what your thoughts are on, helping women in midlife really step into their own self-confidence and their sense of self-worth in this
Mm-hmm.
season of our life. Because I do think so much of that societal norm stuff tears us down.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to look a certain way. You have
Mm-hmm.
to, be the ultimate mom and throw the ultimate parties if you were a parent, and you have to be the ultimate worker that always self-sacrifices at work. And like, there's all of these themes that we lived with in our earlier adulthood that I think in midlife, we really need to kind of smooth out some of those rough edges for ourselves, because otherwise we're still hustling, I think, a bit for our
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
self-worth. So I'm just curious if you have any recommendations for my listeners as far as that goes.
The first thing I do, I would say, is stay off of social media if you don't have to be on it. I mean, there's so many negative messages. I mean, everybody's sharing, and I guess negative may not be the right word, but people are sharing what their best day or their best photo. They're not showing you the day before or earlier that day when your kids were going crazy, or you know, just you were having the worst day. And so don't believe, if you're going to be on social media, don't believe everything you see or you read.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think it's really important to kind of look back, and it's almost like taking stock of the things you've done. Like,
I like that.
And I've actually, one of my guests actually, she was talking to me about starting up a career that she had forgotten about, you know, when she was in college. But in the meantime, she had like raised a family. Her and her then ex-husband had created this new company that went gangbusters and successful. And she was kind of minimizing that as we were talking.
Oh my gosh.
I stopped and I said, no, wait a minute. You just told me all these wonderful things that you did.
Yeah.
And you made them so small, but look what you did. And so but even if you weren't someone who built a major successful company, you raised children and they're still here.
Yeah.
And you're still here. You know, you maybe, you know, I'm all about the traditions, but you know, maybe you raised a family, or you had a household, you were in charge of the bills and the house, and while your husband did the work, or you both worked, and you know, I mean, go back and look at all the things you've accomplished that maybe you didn't realize were big, but they really are, you know.
They are huge. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And maybe some days just getting out of bed was huge.
I like that a lot, because it's so grounded then in who they really are, in their authentic selves too. You're not asking them to start to like build a sense of self-worth on something new that they're doing in midlife, but like take stock and pat yourself on the back. Like, wow,
look what you did.
You've accomplished a lot. And I think that's true even when we haven't, you know, built great businesses with our, you know, ex-partner. I mean, it was obvious kind of what she had done, but like you said, I think, you know, for those that chose parenting, that's rough. And if you do it well, your kids kind of walk out of your house and don't bother you much because they're good adults, because you taught them to do it well. And so it's not really rewarding in and of itself that way. In fact, the only time like my 20-year-old is coming back, it's usually when he's like, Mom, I need help with something. And so it's like, okay, all right. So like, I mean, I think that, you know, for all of us, there's something that we really should be appreciating ourselves better and acknowledging and having gratefulness for. That's a beautiful bit of advice. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So my other piece of advice that I always ask guests is, you know, I work with women in midlife who are feeling stuck predominantly in my coaching business. So, you know, maybe a series of self-sacrificing that kind of bled into self-sabotaging in their life. And so they're in midlife kind of feeling like there isn't any way to turn this ship around. And that's what I really like excel at helping women break that cycle with. So any advice there that, you know, any little nuggets of wisdom, maybe from guests on your podcast or just yourself, on how do you break that pattern of feeling stuck?
Yeah, that is something that I've actually dealt with. And actually kind of right now I'm dealing with it myself a little bit, and what I want to do with my oils part of my stuff, my journey.
Maybe we can help you today. Ooh, I'm getting excited, but go for it.
Woo-hoo.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think it's so hard. Like if you're feeling stuck, it's so easy to get pulled into that. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. All that negative, like crud that's coming in.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's important to, again, stop and breathe and think about, you know, what exactly. I love to write. I've embraced journaling. Like you wouldn't believe. I have a couple notebooks sitting right here, but just writing out, like, what do you want to do? If there were no barriers at all, what do you want to do? And it could be big, it could be little, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And then kind of write down, like, what are those barriers? What's holding you back? And then what can you do to get, you know, break down those barriers? You know, is it money? Exactly. Is it time? What is it? You know, so I know there's always ways to kind of figure out how to break down what's stopping you. And a lot of times it's your own head that's stopping.
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes to mind when you say that, like I think these patterns in our minds can really get us stuck because I mean, let's date ourselves for a second, but it's like old tapes, right? Like you go through something, you're feeling frustrated, and automatically the tape for frustration goes. But unfortunately, it's like telling you a mantra or a story about your life that keeps you where you are. It's a version of who you've been and where you are, but not a version of you into the future. So, one of the things I've done, even a podcast on this, is like, could you sit down and I love writing, right? Like, could you sit down and have a conversation with your future self? And what would she tell you is something you should be doing right now, which is different from that pattern entirely, but is consistent with what her world is going to look like. So if you want her to be really taking this oils business to the next level, and she's doing it day in and day out, what's her advice to you about something that you could be doing right now?
Oh, yeah. I love that. I really do. That's awesome. Yeah.
Because it just it interrupts that pattern, and so you're just kind of breaking that mold and making yourself kind of think about it from a different direction. And then you try something for a while and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, but it still is all in pursuit of breaking the old pattern. But old patterns they're like habits, and our brain it wants to run efficiently. And if it was really thinking about each and every step of everything we do every day, we'd be exhausted 10 minutes after we woke up, right? So it has to use these patterns in order to just, like keep our humaning going. And so you have to break those patterns. You have to interrupt and use conscious awareness differently, which is a little effortful in the beginning, but it can be fun. It can be fun. And I like the idea of journaling because then you're not just thinking about it, you're articulating it into words and you're writing it down, and all of those are using different parts of your brain. So you're really giving yourself a way of practicing something new.
Yeah, for sure. I just recently read The One Thing. Have you read? It's probably like a very famous book, but it talks like that. You pick your one thing, and then it's like kind of what you just said. You kind of know your goal, and it's almost like working backwards.
Yeah.
But saying like this is what it's going to be, and yeah. So I love that thought too, and I've also learned, instead of saying I want to blah 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 blah, I have. Most,
or I am doing,
whatever.
or
I am doing this. Yeah. And that's hard. That was I still am trying to master that,
exactly
coming from that, like,
and I've also, strongly suggested replacing but with and, which is super difficult. But there you go. I just said it. The reason you want to do that is but negates the first part of your sentence. And I think that we don't ever, as women in midlife, want to negate the first part of our life.
No.
Like, I did that and I am doing this. I am pursuing this, which is different in my life. Both are true, right? That I think is really important. Instead of feeling like we're diminishing the first part of our life. I don't know. It was great. I mean, most of us really we don't have like heavy complaints about it. We're just feeling stuck because we know that where we've been isn't sustainable into where we want to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and answering those questions for us, because you've really given us some things to think about today, Kim. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful.
What, if anything, would you like me to share with my listenership about what you're doing? Because I'd love to point them in the direction of your podcast, Midlife with Courage, but anything else that you're doing these days as well. So tell us.
Yeah. So I would love for them to listen to the podcast. Of course, it's called Midlife with Courage, and it's on all the platforms. I've had some really awesome guests, of you included.
Thank you.
And I've got some really interesting ones coming up that will be very inspirational, I hope, for other people. And so that's doing really well. I'm excited about it. I've kind of been rejuvenated. I took a little break from it for a while, just to kind of step away, and I'm coming back, and it's been
I'm
wonderful.
so glad to hear that others had that experience. I took about a month and a half off at the end of the year to kind of markate between my seasons. I didn't realize how much I needed that. I love doing this. Like I really do.
Yes.
And it's a lot of work. I mean, it really, if you're doing it all on your own, it's so doable, but there's just a lot of admin tasks with, you know, all the things that go into it. So I appreciate your sharing that for me.
For sure. Yay.
Yes.
Yeah. And then as far as the oils, this is where I'm kind of, you know, the aromatherapy is an awesome, wonderful field, and there's so much more that I need to learn, but I've been doing, you know, selling products that I make, you know, kind of what I call pre-made products at different vendor events and things. And I have that I'm in a store, and I want to get away from that because that's not what I am meant to do. You know, I want to educate. So I'm working on I have a course almost ready to go. I just have to do the technical part of it.
Exciting.
Yeah. But that's like, I'm a little stuck because I'm like, the technical part is getting to me. So today is as we're recording this, after we're done, I'm going to be working on that and getting it done.
Gotcha.
So that will be coming. And and then I'm also doing a little oil subscription where people can get a video every month that tells them how to use one specific oil. So people will know that, you know, if you have your peppermint, what can I use that for? Or your lavender, whatever it happens to be. And it's not, you know, I'm not selling you the oils. I'm just telling you how to use them safely and appropriately. So all of that is going to be on my website, which is midlifewithcourage.com. Very easy to find. So,
okay. And I'll make sure to have links to your website in the notes and, you know, to whatever social media that you want to have us go to, plus the podcast. So that's great. You know, I just recently had a health expert on, Mary Bush Cole, at the beginning of the year. And I'm amazed at how toxic, you know, some of the environmental stuff is to our hormone system, which we had more bandwidth to kind of wiggle around in when we were younger. But in midlife, as our progesterone and estrogen stores go down and our adrenal glands are taking over estrogen production and our ovaries are shutting that down over like a 10-year period, like oils can be really great adaptogens. That was really what she had talked about, is like they're ways of kind of augmenting your health, but not interfering with your hormone system, which is so important when it's diminishing at this time in your life. So something to think about. It's like if you get that up and going, like that people might want to learn a little bit more about what these oils can do for their health, that other things are interfering with that endocrine system.
Oh, right. And there's so much more that I need to learn about that too. But I do have, like, one of my products that I make is I call it a hot flash survival kit with a peppermint spray and a roller that helps support your hormones and all those wonderful things.
I love it. Yeah, when you said peppermint, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I think that was one of them that she said we could use as an adaptogen. So good.
Yes,
good.
for sure. So but then explaining why is that? Why do these oils help? And, you know, why it's important. So yeah, I love that. That's
Plus
what I want.
They just smell good. I mean,
and they smell so good. Yeah.
They smell so good. Yes, I've had, clearly I am not at my 100% in my voice. And I also have a friend that does oils, and she had shared with me some to help with my breathing. And so I have like a diffuser next to the bed at night.
Yes,
and it's remarkable. It's definitely started to get my voice to kick back in quicker, because I was a little worried. Monday I was like, so we wouldn't have been able to record this. Let's just say that without oils. This was generated by oils.
Yes. Wonderful. Yay. Good commercial for them.
Great. I know. Exactly. I'm glad to help put a plug in, but I really do value kind of those alternatives to the traditional medicine route. And if you really struggle with hormone symptoms, you should talk to your physician about hormone replacement therapy, because I'm also a big advocate for that, knowing that the original study really led us down a bad path for the last 10 years, thinking that it was going to cause cancer and heart disease to do hormone replacement therapy. And so a lot of women just are needlessly suffering. So starting with oils, I think, is a nice
Yes,
soft entry level, but definitely
for sure.
also
Yeah.
consider if
And
you need that. Mm-hmm.
just to go on another tangent too, I notice, there's being more attention paid to menopause and perimenopause. Like it used, well, we don't talk about that. It's just a normal part of life and you just have to deal with it. Well, since we're paying more attention to it, I've noticed more advertising for medications for it, which I'm not
Interesting.
super excited about because
Mm-mm.
that's not that's not how I approach it.
Right.
But anyway, so just like, I love that you mentioned oils because there are other things we should try first before
Definitely.
we do the
Yeah,
medications and
supplements and
the drugs.
oils and coming at it from, our nutrition and good sleep.
Yes. Yes.
All of those systems are integrally, weaved into our circadian rhythms. And so we need to
Mm-hmm.
just, as you said earlier in the podcast, listen to our bodies. And when the
Mm-hmm.
symptoms are there, try these, other ways of adapting our lifestyle around it and see
Right.
if that improves it first. And if it
Right.
doesn't, then, consider talking to a medical
Consider.
professional about what else you can do. Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. For
Don't
sure.
suffer, though. That's really the
No.
theme. Don't suffer.
No, you
That's
do
just
not
not
need to
necessary.
suffer. There is help
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kim. And I
Yeah.
wish you well with Midlife with Courage. Maybe I'll guest on there again sometime.
Yes,
Since it
actually, I want
has
to talk to
been
you
a
about
little
that.
while. Yeah. But
Yeah.
you definitely were an inspiration for this podcast. So I
Oh,
just
thank you
really
so
appreciate
much.
you.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I loved hearing, well, my daughter did it. I figured I could do it. I was like, well, if she can do it, I could probably do that. I probably could figure this out. I love it. I love it. So it was really
That is
inspirational.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that because sometimes I get the little voice saying, who nobody's listening. What? And then I get something like this where you say something like that. I'm like, okay,
Nope.
thanks. I'm
Exactly.
good.
It's very important. And it's good
Yes.
when we take breaks so that we're not burned out on it, because I think it is beneficial. Even if they're small audiences, we definitely have audiences. And you've made
Definitely.
it past 100 episodes. So that is something to be
Yeah.
really proud of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm over 150 now. So
Woo,
yay.
look at that. Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yay.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, listeners. And I hope that you found something, little nugget of wisdom here from Kim Benoy and Midlife with Courage, and that will help you on your journey to lead a centered life, thriving.
Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these two crisis resources. They're available to anybody. Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone, text HOME, home, to 741-741 to the crisis text line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast. And I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.